So this is basically a summary of my work and my ethics and my teaching from a grandfather. I've written several articles over the last 2 years, one for the Permaculture America magazine and one for the Permaculture UK magazine. They're a really good background to read for this presentation. They give a good foundation of what's brought me to where I am at the moment and what my life work's kind of entailed and where I'm going into the future. But this presentation, the themes are going to be the ethics of permaculture under the banner of Designing for Humanity, which is my non-profit organisation, which I work with in Australia and overseas, predominantly Mexico. And I work and engage with other countries through online consultancy and design feedback and guidance as well. So I engage with a lot of different charities, but this is the first slide. So of working in northern Mexico and the Caribbean too. So here I taught quite a lot of students. Probably in about 2009, I first went over to teach a few courses in Mexico City, and we might have got, I don't know, 3 or 4 students to that very first course, which wasn't very many, and then we kept on teaching, and we got maybe 6 or 7 to our second one, which was a PDC in Puebla, south of Mexico City. And then I finally made my way down to the Caribbean, and by the time I got down to Playa del Carmen, I was teaching up to 80 or 150 people at a course because it was free and accessible education to everyone. And that really broke a lot of barriers in terms of culture and my perceptions of what education can do and how it can kind of empower people to create positive change or be the change they want to see in the world too. So here's an image of me to the left. So this is my second trip to Mexico in 2012, 2013, teaching students how to build rooftop gardens in both the Caribbean, in Playa del Carmen, and then building aquaponic rooftops in systems in Monterey on the left there, just putting the barbed wire down between the layers. So super adobe is a technique of earth building, and you can build retaining walls, houses, bomb shelters, and fire bunkers out of them. So the great thing about them is you can use the local soil that's there and just put it into the earth bag and stamp it down. So it's pretty much sandbag technology, but used for houses as well. This is taught at Cal Earth, which is north of LA in California. It's a great institution, and they work quite closely with the permaculture community in California there as well. So we'll go to the next slide. So here's me doing different consultancies and handing out micro loans around different developing low-income communities. So these communities don't have sanitation, garbage disposal, sewage, clean water and all that. So we were establishing legal land tenure, which allows people to invest in their properties and establish water tanks and then composting toilets, so on and so forth. But the house loans, the incomes in the communities were maybe $35 a month for 4 people, which is below the UN poverty guideline, and the rate of illiteracy was quite high, so we had to actually speak the contracts to the clients, and then would engage in the building process. So there was a lot of surveying done before to see who was an appropriate candidate, and if the loan was too much for them, it was done for free. But often it was done at, say, $1 or $2, deposit, which they can afford off, a day's wage if they get a day's worth of work, one a month. So it was all economically scaled, and then it would come in with maybe, you know, 30 or 40 volunteers, and the whole community would come together to build the house. So that community's evolved into coming together in community centres, which I was quite fearful of because of domestic violence and persecution by the police. These were illegal communities because even though it was on government land, they were considered illegals. A lot of them, 60% of the population were economic migrants to the US. So that kind of gives you an idea of the kind of demographics we're working with as well. So we're trying to develop a community or a sense of place so they didn't feel like they had to migrate across to the US, or that, because it was quite a dangerous trek across to Texas. And as a few of you might be aware, a lot of them perished because of, you know, lack of water in that journey. So we're educating them about the risk of running the border too. So it's quite a complex situation as well. So it's kind of an exciting way to engage with people in permaculture, and coming from such a, you know, desperate situation to what a great community that's evolved into now, from people not talking to each other to coming together. It just goes to show, you know, the power of humanity and the power of permaculture to kind of transform it. So for me personally, it was a bit of a test to see, you know, how permaculture really stands up in these situations, and it kind of defied my kind of expectations and beliefs too. But that's the power of education at the end of the day. So the next slide, here we are back in Australia. So the first image on the left is the English oak forest in Tagari, northwest Tasmania, in the middle of summer, and the ground gets covered with about 3 or 4 inches of acorns each year, which the pigs graze on. So at the peak of the property, we're having really good pigs coming off, maybe 14 piglets each year, raised on acorns. That was really, you know, amazing me. And that's got a slow swale rifting through those oak trees as well. And those oak trees are about, I think, 15 years ago, we all planted them up there. And there's American chestnuts and all different manners of, yeah, oaks and chestnuts through there as well. And that's just one kind of grazing and forage system Grandpa, me and the crew designed and planted together up there. So the middle image there we see is from a community I lived on in northern Victoria. And this is really kind of going back to that permaculture ethic of care of people, which can seem a bit ambiguous, but as Bill, you know, outlined that ethic, it's kind of a summary or kind of a synthesis of a belief or an idea. And that's working together, and compassion, humility, dignity, and all those kind of great aspirational human traits we all have as a virtue. So bringing community together can show the best, in my experience, can show the best of each other, but also the worst of each other, because you're living and working together constantly. And there's been a lot of different models of community I've seen work well and not so well. And when people go into it with excitement, it often kind of backfires off them. But the better communities I've seen have been well measured and gathered, and kind of go into it with a bit of knowledge and experience working behind them. That community is still ongoing in Victoria. I lived in a teepee for a year up there, which was kind of a bit of a testing environment and a bit of a harrowing experience in the wind and the rain and yeah, the frost and yeah, the cold, and then we got up to 30 or 40 degrees Celsius. I'm not sure what that is in Fahrenheit in summer, but we're able to plant, again, native forage systems for kangaroos and wallabies, and the native birds started to come back, and we got indigenous plants established. So that's how we implemented care for the earth, or care for the environment. But growing food up there was a particular challenge because of, you know, kangaroos eating our vegetables, or so we had to build a big cage to grow them in, or a big kind of out of recycled pallets and chicken wire, and that stopped you know, the kangaroos and the possums eating all our fruit and vegetables. So wherever we planted, we had to think about it very smartly in terms of, okay, where can we keep an eye on it so we know if the kangaroos have got into the veggie patch. Or so it's kind of a different, very contrasting environment to what I was used to growing up with in northwest Tasmania, where if there was enough food around for, you know, all the animals and all the birds and all the, you know, wallabies and stuff. So, but before I went to Victoria, while I was still a university student, I got a grant to do a community garden in Launceston, in I think northeast Tasmania, where I went to university, and that was to do 6 community gardens over 6 months. So I grew them in pallets, as you can see in the third image to the right, over 6 months, and then I put them all in with about 10 mates and 6 cars and trailers in one night. So the city went from growing no food to 6 community pop-up illegal gardens the next day. So 3 were approved by council and 3 weren't, just because of my rebellious kind of uni streak I probably inherited from my grandfather. And they were quite exciting gardens. So a lot of them were in car parks. So it's kind of that notion of reimagining the city as into how we can grow food, or how quickly individuals or working together can manifest change. And one of those kind of developed into a long ongoing community garden with it came out of an illegal community garden I did initially. So I think if we each dare to, you know, be the change we want to see in the world, we can actually, you know, manifest these things and bring people together. And quite a lot of things came out of that one illegal community garden. Like, I got asked to do a lecture at the University of South Australia, to the School of Architecture, about my illegal community gardens, and that's something I never expected to happen. So it's kind of one of those, you know, really hilarious outcomes you can't kind of plan for or expect. Like, I was just growing free food for students in the community, and all these amazing kind of opportunities came out of that. So this is the Permaculture kind of concept I developed at university over 5 years. It's combining permaculture and architecture into permaculture. So it's a portmanteau, similar to what permaculture is, combining permaculture, permanent and culture, or permanent and agriculture. So kind of playing around with that wordplay too. So what the university degree taught me a lot was design development, drawing, testing through models. Got a lot of great Photoshop skills, not much that I use now though, but working across scale. So the first panel on the left is quite a big scale. It takes in the scope of the valley, so where we could grow biodiesel. So the scenario for the project was post-peak oil, and the scenario was like, Tasmania's been cut off from oil. What are we going to do for fuel? What are we going to do for food? What are we going to do for energy? So I designed a holistic system of design that kind of solved all those problems. So we're growing our own, you know, kind of biodiesel. We had our own, the old train system was reignited. We had to increase population density in the city because it wasn't affordable to, you know, spend $10 or $20 on gas a week to go out to to the country to live or to the suburbs, because there was simply not the oil around. So I was coming up with a positive solution, and then developing this into kind of a medium density development where people could grow their own food as well. So we had multi-level vegetable garden towers, multi-use residential space. We also had a factory, which you'll see on the far right panel. There's a tower down the bottom right hand corner, and the factory actually, used solar power, parabolic dishes and stuff to melt old metal into new passive design towers. So there was a lot going on there, but that's why I think, for me, graphic communication and design drawings really fundamental in articulating an idea or what's going on upstairs in my head. So for me, that was one of the great things I take away from university, and I still teach in my permaculture design courses and consultancies and development work as well. Because if you don't have communication, what's the point of having a message, really? And for me, it's still a constant kind of work of progress, as developing my design skills, developing my communication skills, developing my writing skills. So it's been quite an incredible journey going through university, and then moving to Victoria 4 years ago after I finished to do my own design practice, and then, go into carpentry and natural building, and then a bit of consultancy too. So it'd be great to have some questions around that too, because it's something I'd really like to explore as well. There was a lot of different models and different scales there as well. And I think all of those design communication techniques are highly relevant to, permaculture, and getting it to, that professional level of design communication, so we can, articulate our ideas at that professional level and be taken seriously. Because I've been a big surprise I've come across in the last 6 months. I've been working for a lot of landscape architects and professional landscapers in Melbourne. They know what permaculture is, but they don't engage with it because it's not considered a professional outcome, even though they really agree or love the ethics. So I think it's that kind of principle of listening and understanding the problem of people care, or that core ethic, in order to kind of unpack and resolve the problem too. But then again, you've got to choose which, battles you fight and which kind of lessons you teach too. And it's great to talk to people in the permaculture community, but for me, it's extending that into different realms in order to engage different kind of industries and see what their take on sustainability is. And in Australia, it's quite a highly developed movement, sustainability, and that's not essentially associated with permaculture, which I can find quite frustrating. But then I say, where's that frustrating coming from? It's coming from a lack of understanding. And sustainability, the word kind of came out of permaculture in the 80s. So for me, it's going back to getting it up to that professional level of accountability that, architecture firms have, that lawyers have, that, that doctors have, and getting that level of professionalism in design communication, design articulation, and peer-reviewed studies, which is starting to happen in the last few years, which I'm finding quite exciting. A big pioneer in this area is Darren Doherty. So I would count him as one of my big mentors and influences in terms of that regard too. He taught me at my first permaculture design course in 2002 or maybe a bit earlier, but that was his first one teaching. So it was kind of a big, revelation for us both to have our, lives changed by both of these transformative kind of things. And I did that one. Darren Doherty taught alongside Bill Mollison, my grandfather, at that one. And then I think it was 2 years later I started teaching with Bill on composting, mulching and soil, because that's a lot of what I did up at the farm, was a lot of composting, a lot of mulching, and a lot of soil and grazing management too. So here's an example of one of the buildings I built. This was for my father in northwest Tasmania, probably only 20 minutes from where Bill and I established a farm with the family up there. So yeah, I probably should mention I worked on the farm with my two brothers. My older brother Jerome, he's a practicing doctor, and my younger brother Jack, he's a practicing pharmacist. So it was an amazing experience growing up there too, working with those three and causing all types of mischief on the farm with the machinery and stuff. I don't know how we got through it alive, but we did. So this is one of the first kind of house I got built after I finished university. And as you'll see to the right, there's a sunward direction. So in the southern hemisphere, our sun comes from the north. Where you guys are in the northern hemisphere, sun comes from the south. So I've just put sunward direction here. It's completely insulated. It's got eco quality ply in there, so it's all plantation ply. It's not from forests. It's well insulated and it's still got a high quality place. And it's also got a concrete slab, but it's concrete seen as a bad material, but that's kind of the compromise I had to come up with the builder. Because he wasn't competent in building a natural earth floor. And then that's insulated around the outside, so it provides a great thermal mass for winter. But the eave comes across to the north of it, or the sunward direction, the shaded in summer, so it provides cold radiant heat in summer and warm radiant heat in winter. So I've got this natural regulation thing too. So the building needs no heating or cooling as well, and it's also got natural ventilation as well, so you don't need a fan. So you can think of those things quite simply by designing, drawing, testing, developing your design with other people as well. So here we are back in Tasmania at my first illegal community garden, where kind of I was trying it was kind of an interesting process. Like, there was nothing there, and me and my mates, I think there was 4 of us on the day. We did all this in one day, and we just got on high-vis vests and put down the tiles and chucked down the soil, and everybody assumed, because we were wearing high visibility vests, that were from and we dressed like construction workers, that were from the local council or local government. So nobody bothered us. But if we just went in there covertly, people would have said, hey, what are you doing? You can't do this here. But at the end of the day, we got this amazing, great, vibrant, illegal community garden. And that's where kind of my personal journey of doing community gardens in Mexico and community gardens in South Australia, Adelaide and Victoria started. Because even though the gardens got taken away, I think it says more than anything that we're only here for a moment in time, and what kind of impact are we going to have. And having a social impact is just as important as having an environmental impact, because what I often find in my consultancy work, people are very much focused on the environmental incomes, but it's the environmental outcomes, but it's the social outcomes that reinforce that particularly. And that was kind of the oversight with with oversight, the oversight of the project too. So yeah, we didn't have any problems. Like, I'm only a little bit crazy from eating food out of the tyres, but I know it's all right to have one eye roll a little bit to the side occasionally from all the heavy metals in there. But you just get whatever fruit and veggies you can as a student, I guess. But yeah, it was yeah, a great project, and yeah, it was something I wouldn't take back. Even though I got in quite a lot of trouble from the faculty for putting it there, they came on board as soon as I started delivering, you know, fruit and vegetables from the front lawn out the front. So it was, I think it was only like $50 or $70 in soil and free tyres. So once it was up and productive, we were able to feed, you know, the university worth of students, and the students were on such a low income they couldn't necessarily, they were eating like, you know, 2-minute noodles or, you know, those really bad margarine noodles. So we were able to provide people with, you know, quality food and a wholesome diet out of that vegetable garden, as well as a place of connecting to the soil and connecting to their food as well. And it actually broke down a lot of different barriers between, you know, faculty and staff, and different community groups using that same social precinct as well. So that's a surprising thing that came out of it for me, was it broke down like barriers between police, students, sporting fans, all that. It was quite funny. I was harvesting some vegetables in there one day, and a police officer came up to me and said, "Mate, you're meant to be harvesting those." And I was like, "Yeah, it's community food. I planted it here for everyone. Here, you have cabbage." I gave the cabbage to the police officer. So it's kind of that, you know, having that positive notion of, you know, growing food for change, or for like interest in amazing conversations spark up that you know, you can't plan or foresee, just out of a, you know, illegal community garden that feeds everybody who wants it. And it was really important for us not to have a fence around it so people could harvest it. So it was kind of that democratic, you know, access to food, or access to nutrition as well. Let me just, so I'll go back to this one to talk about, I might get my article up if that's all right.
And the article he's pulling up is available on the show notes as well, guys. If you want to pull that up, you can head over to tv.permaethos.com, and the article's in there.
Because that's got some really good talking points I think we can explore and unpack in regards to the theme of the ethics of how do I get out of this. So there we go. So this is an article I did for the Permaculture UK magazine, and this is when I really started to talk about my work on kind of writing about it, which was a really important step for me, both personally and academically as well. And
hey Stuart, sorry to interrupt you.
Yep.
You'll have to stop sharing and then start sharing again, but choosing the article instead.
Okay, so oh yeah, and then go share screen. Oh yeah, cool. Here we go. Can you see that?
There we go.
Yeah, there we go. So this will have a few prompts for me to kind of explore a bit too. So I went over how it all started. I went over to the US and for Permaculture Voices 2 in San Diego, where I met Maddie Harland after my talk, and she offered me to write an article for the Permaculture UK magazine too. And it kind of gave me a really good reflective point on like what's brought me to this point, and where I'm going into the future and what I've done in the past. And it was a really great opportunity for me to express my work to the wider, permaculture community and the wider permaculture world as well. So I'll just read the first kind of paragraph, because I think it's quite poignant to the topic of this talk, about the ethics and the kind of direction of the permaculture movement. So permaculture transcends language, religion, culture and race. It speaks to something innately humane in all of us. We all need to be connected to our food, water and each other through community as a matter of self-actualization. This is what must unite the collective aspirations of humanity as an evolutionary goal. So for me, this is really summing up the first chapter of my grandfather's book, Permaculture A Designer's Manual, on page 2, where he's talking about ethics as being an evolution of, the human morale too. And morals is an underpinning branch of philosophy too. And without having morals, we kind of walking or working very much blindsided. So it's unpacking that philosophical package that permaculture gives us into a kind of moral or a value foundation into our life. And many of us working with permaculture, we already have the value of, looking after nature, working with the earth, working with the soil too, but it's kind of unpacking that at a deeper level too. So talking about the morals of what we do, talking about the virtues of what we do in terms of tackling it with the right compassion, humanity, the right kind of listening skills as well. So for me, reading my grandfather's books, the Permaculture Designer's Manual, it's like he's talking to me right now. It's like we're having a conversation, or he's giving one of his amazing lectures to me. So for me, that's the way I can still connect with him, even though he's kind of passed on to the next realm, onto the next dimensional plane or universe to wreak havoc there as well. It's probably planting trees in heaven before moving on to the next dimensional plane as well. So I'm pretty sure he's causing havoc wherever he is, or mischief too. So for me, it's a basic premise that we all agree on in permaculture, and that's what really excites me about the ethical basis of the movement as well. And I think that's the difference for me in permaculture compared to any other organisation, whether it be, the Red Cross or Save the Children. They're all great organisations, but they don't have this quite profound impact on so many realms of different human endeavour. And when I teach people, as Grandpa did, it's not as if their old lives become irrelevant. They often bring that life story to permaculture. So I've seen, people in aged care bring permaculture into their work to create, community gardens, or to create sensory gardens for dementia patients that help trigger memory through, smelling rosemary or lavender. So my mother does that, who's Bill's daughter. She creates gardens for the elderly and sick as well. So she's a big inspiration for me too. And permaculture kind of moves beyond capitalism to talk about something, different, or an alternative paradigm. And that's kind of brings me to the final, you know, the final chapter of the designer's manual, strategies for an alternate global nation, which I often find is often skipped in permaculture design courses, or teachers aren't really comfortable or aware of how to teach it as well. But I think it's one of the most fundamental, you know, kind of chapters of the book, because before that we're talking about amazing things like global weather patterns, and it's a lot to comprehend the book. It's best used as a reference guide, but you can read one chapter at a time when you need to. So for me, continuing his legacy is about implementing that final chapter, strategies for an alternate global nation, and coming up with the United Nations, like an alternative United Nations, which I think we've got in the permaculture movement, that actually represents Indigenous groups and Indigenous values, and also the values we bring as individuals from our own culture and our own communities. And when I say communities, I don't mean it as in living off grid in the bush, growing your own food like I did. That's quite extreme. You often do have your own, or you do have your own community amongst your own family, friends, sharing networks, education and work. So I think for me, that's a big part of my lesson, is learning that community does exist absolutely everywhere. It's just people that share a common set of values, whatever that may look like as well. So strategies for an alternate global nation, that's a lot to do with bioregionalism, but it's also to do with social catchment as well. So how much of your energy can actually be well spent. And that's something I've been learning the hard way, is not to be, you know, investing your energy into the wrong kind of areas, or where you're going to see a return on investment. Because if I put a lot of my energy into a project, then I get nothing, you know, nothing back to replenish my body with, you know, food, you know, nutritious food, an income to support myself. It's not providing me with a livelihood. So then again, we go back to that ecological or biological principle of a feedback cycle or a feedback loop. And if the cycle's broken, it's not going to last for very long. It's going to run out. So even a river regenerates itself through rain. And if we're not regenerating ourselves through, you know, friendship and compassion and humility and being listened to, we're just going to burn out, which is what I did after this trip to Mexico, because it was just so full on. Here in the left, I was teaching 40 students, which was an amazing experience. I wouldn't change it for anything, but a lot of them are coming up to me with really heavy questions at night. So you've got to learn your boundaries in terms of people care for self, and all those type of things. But then again, that's how I practice fair share too, which is kind of Bill wrote later on that in terms of that ethic in the designer's manual, it's limits to growth, but I think it's in brackets fair share, which is return the surplus. So take what you need to replenish yourself, as in an income, food and water, shelter, get your Maslow hierarchy in order, and then you can kind of work on giving back to the communities as well. So a big part of how I practice people care is kind of, that social justice, accountability, optimistic project outcomes. So we're not obsessed with the problem. We're focused on where we can actually go by working together, which really does excite students too. And it proves to me that the message of permaculture does work across barriers itself, even though we kind of divide it up into these national border lines that are kind of, you know, that old construct of the mind. So for me, growing up with Grandpa, I kind of tore apart all of these ideas I had put into me as a child, and he was quite an amazing genius for the way he communicated and articulated that story. And for me, it's something I'll never forget, and I think I'm one of the most fortunate people to be able to spend so much time with him and be one of his good mates for like the best part, or like my whole teens and into my early 20s, and still get to spend time with him. And he was a great teacher and a great mentor of mine. And we did get up to a lot of mischief, but we also had some amazing conversations over cups of tea when the weather was too wild to work outside. So that's something, yeah, I'll never forget. And my memories of him, I still hold quite dear to me. And him going on to the next realm has been something I didn't know how I'd kind of process, but it's been an interesting process to see how kind of all these memories would come up. And I think for me, carrying on his legacy is the best way I can honour his memory too, and honour my mum too, being his daughter. So everybody in the family does their own little bit of permaculture in their backyard, but they practice it in their own way as well. So my mum and my dad have always had amazing gardens. Mum's getting into a little bit of consultancy and doing illustration work and a little bit of teaching at the moment, which is quite exciting for her. And my auntie Ruth, she's quite heavily involved in the permaculture movement in Hobart in southern Tasmania. So there is a few people in the family who've really taken up his legacy as well. But for the family, it was more of a relationship of Bill being their father or, grandfather, as opposed to the permaculture head of the global movement, which I'm not sure a lot of the family fully comprehend, but he was still, an amazing human being. And I think, we owe it to him to remember the best of him. And the best of his writings, and we can always listen to him by reading his books as well, because I think that's an amazing legacy to leave behind as well. So are we about at the end of our time, or we still got a bit of time to go?
We're right about at an hour. You can keep going if you'd like.
Sure. So I'll just read another really good quote. Like, often when I feel overwhelmed by the scale of my projects, I listen to Nelson Mandela or Martin Luther King, and one of the really good ones that kind of sums up the social kind of construct we have towards poverty is one by Nelson Mandela, and it starts at, quote, "Overcoming poverty is not a task of charity, it is an act of justice. Like slavery and apartheid, poverty is not natural. It is man-made, and it can be overcome and eradicated by the actions of human beings. Sometimes it falls on a generation to be great. You can be that great generation. Let your greatness blossom." And for me, it's not changing, going out and changing the world like Bill did. It's finding, contentness or meaning in those little acts in your day. It might be feeding the chickens. That's changing the world because you're actually kind of closing that cycle loop. Or it might be having a conversation, or it might be planting a tree, it might be talking to a school or a teacher. It's the acts of it's the accumulation of the little acts of kindness that create a great change as well too. We can admire what Bill done, but I think he was kind of an enigma or some kind of mystic. He was from a different realm other than, what we all kind of exist on or try and understand. And he did leave quite the impact on me and my brothers and my cousins as well. So, and we do our bit as well. And I think it's really important to remember those foundational ethics and compassion. And when we get stuck or lost, we can always turn back to his books for that kind of, light in the darkness, or that beacon of hope. to kind of guide us through. And just by, you know, participating in your local community garden, or even starting one if you don't have one, or having a conversation with a friend, that's a little act of, you know, kindness that will add up to something big in the end. So it's finding those little things that can really foster ecosystem and community restoration and regeneration that permaculture is about. And when I asked Bill, like, how did he start the permaculture movement, it was just having a conversation over a cup of tea. It wasn't teaching a big course or doing a 1,000-acre consultancy. It was just talking about an idea over a cup of tea. So a cup of tea or a cup of coffee is quite, you know, a world-changing thing if you look at it in those things. And it's coming up with those social connections or those community connections to friends that are the foundation for our world-changing, you know, movement of permaculture we have today. And for me, I think that's the biggest message in it all. Like the big acts of change done by the, you know, the smallest of gestures. So even though we might not think we're making a change, I think we all are making an amazing change by the little things we do each day. And when you've kind of got your home base, you know, fixed up, you've got your secure accommodation, you've got your land, you've got your ecosystem restoration, you can go out and teach and invite other community members into, or your neighbours, or just spark up interest, or invite the local paper around. So it's the act of the common people, not necessarily the pioneers of the movement, I think we've got to honour as well. And that's the big thing I've found in my work with working with poorer communities in northern Mexico. They've become leaders and teachers of change as well, even though they weren't expecting that or have that kind of, you know, requirement, and they're teaching how to build, you know, composting toilets and houses. So it's taken its own life on, and I had no kind of, you know, expectation of that. And working with, you know, Grandpa's 12 principles of permaculture design, or the 12 Mollison principles, which can be found in the introduction of permaculture, it gives you a really good pragmatic lens of tackling a problem or tackling a project. And I think what we're gifted with in the permaculture movement is a great skill for observation. So observation is not just looking, it's looking and understanding too, or it's looking and seeing the patterns or the wonder and the awe in nature as well. And up until his final years, even Grandpa was kind of inspired or amazed by nature. Like he'd point out the window and go, wow, Stu, look at that amazing honey. He's so fat from all the nectar from the bottle brush. And it's just like this amazing nectar. But most people just glance past that bird, but it's just seeing, you know, having that amazing skill or amazing insight into observation that kind of gives us that inspiration in the little things that happen each day that keeps us, you know, carrying on to do, you know, bigger and better things as well. So, yeah, for me, doing permaculture in Mexico was a really big kind of part of my life, and it's a part of my life. I think that's, you know, finished for a part. I might have one more trip back to Mexico, but I don't think it'll be too much work related. I might be seeing a few projects or teaching one or two courses. But for me, the focus is on developing ecological businesses here in Australia around the blue economy model, and doing more, you know, architecture work and changing things in the professional realm of things, and a bit more teaching to come up in the next few years. So for me, it's my focus has shifted a bit away from the humanitarian work to kind of build up a stronger foundation, or, you know, a bit more of that self-care, that fourth ethic some people drop in there sometime. because if you know, you can't serve from an empty vessel, I think is the old saying. So for me, it's very much doing that at the moment, and I still offer, you know, support and grants to developing communities. In Mexico, I just don't go over there as much. But I think we've just got to take the opportunities that are presented to us on a day-to-day or a week-to-week basis and see where those opportunities lead, in terms of, it might be a conversation, it might be a project, it might be, you know, an opportunity to garden, it might be an opportunity just to sit and observe nature too, and following where those observations can lead us. And that's something that, yeah, Grandpa always did, was took time to be with people and to observe nature as well. But he's also a very prolific writer. He wrote so much. He just like drank probably the most tea I've ever seen anyone drink, 6 to 8 cups of tea a day, and just wrote. And then, yeah, cook some food, just leave the washing up, eat it, read, go and do some garden, throw some mulch, have a cup of tea, do some writing, have a nap, throw some mulch on the garden, have a cup of tea, do some writing. That was kind of his pattern of behaviour. And then, like, you know, take a phone call, have a nap. So it's kind of like strategically napping all throughout the day. He had probably one of the most chaotic sleeping patterns I've ever known. But like, you'd just walk up to go to the bathroom at 3 a.m. in the morning, there would be Grandpa writing at his desk, drinking a cup of tea, like really deep into his book. And he would read a book from cover to cover and write an essay on each book he wrote, and then he would open the next book and study it studiously. So that's how he developed a lot of his writing, was through an amazing, you know, kind of insight. And the incredible thing for me is he didn't go to university until he was, you know, in his late 30s, early 40s. So the window kind of opened late for him, and it just goes to show the power of the human mind to learn as well. So it's quite a maverick as well. Like, would go to the nursery and buy every native tree they had there. So that might have been, you know, $3,000 or $4,000 worth of trees, and the owner, Jim, would be like just beside himself and pack the, you know, car full of maybe a few thousand trees, and then spend the next 2 weeks planting all these trees into and now those trees are a forest. And we went, you know, repeated that, year after year up there, and now there's, you know, thousands of trees. And yeah, we always had our little adventures, like going away, because he was on quite a strict diet for himself. We always went to the cafe to get big bowls of ice cream and coffee and donuts and things like that. Then we'd go back to the health farm and be, you know, having to eat a lot of kale and lettuce and cabbage and potatoes. But he always loved eating fish. That's something he really loved his grandchildren bringing him. So me and my younger brother, Jack, would go fishing in the East Inlet, where Grandpa told a lot of his stories from. Catch flounder, his favourite fish. So how you catch flounder spearing. So would go right into the inlet, stun them with the light in the middle of the night, and then put a spear through their head, kill and gut them, and take them to Grandpa, and he'd cook them up for us for breakfast, and be probably the happiest grandfather around. And we took him a lot of, you know, trout and tuna and all the bounties of the sea. So yeah, keeping it, I think that was one of the most satisfactory things I could do as a grandson for Grandpa, was go and catch him some fish and take him, because he always loved that connection with the sea as well. And we'd always go and get up to mischief as well. Like, it's quite bizarre. We were out just diving for seaweed or kelp to make agar, and the national park or the ranger came up and said, "What are you doing?" And I was just like, "Oh, we're just getting seaweed to take agar." And the kind of ranger couldn't really process what we were doing. And he was just like, "Okay, I don't think I can fine you for that," because it was a national park, it was protected. But off to the side of the boat ramp, we had, like, you know, 12 abalone, which he didn't find. So it worked out well in the end. And then, yeah, we made agar, which was just, you kind of boil your kelp up in a big pot, and it's this thick layer of fat that rises to the top of the pot, and you can use that as a jelly for different cooking or different ferments as well. So yeah, he definitely increased my, like when I first went to Grandpa's, I only ate Vegemite sandwiches. Now there's pretty much nothing I don't eat. I eat abalone, or the most weird thing he made was abalone gut patties. So he got the guts of them and made these green, disgusting patties out of them. That was a bit of a weird one. I think he pushed around, and he's like, yeah, they're edible, but they're not nice. So it was good to kind of, and yeah, we ate anything that was kind of flying, like whether it was blackbirds or magpies or starlings, people that are considered pesty birds, but I wouldn't recommend to eat them either. So yeah, it's just great to have that experience to reflect on, and those memories of my grandfather too. And it was really good to go to, you know, Stanley and to the East Inlet to have picnics where he grew up as a child, and me having those same experiences of the same beaches and growing up in the same street he did. I can see why he was so captivated or inspired by nature, because Stanley is probably one of the most beautiful towns you could ever imagine. It's got a peninsula going out to it, and then it's just yeah, kind of at the head of a bay, and the bay wraps around, and it's just got the most, you know, beautiful weather in summer and the most amazing fish, or the most amazing fishing and diving you can do. So you can get, you know, your lobsters, yeah, whatever kind of shellfish, abalone, black lip or green lip, or there's 40 different types of fish you can catch off the wharf because of the cold and the warm water meeting together. So having those, sharing those fishing stories with my brothers and with my grandfather was a great experience. But I think I got the permaculture gene, and my younger brother got the fishing gene from Grandpa, because my younger brother, he's a mad fisherman, just fishes every hour of every day that he's not working. Like after work he'll go fishing, before work he'll go fishing, like when we go out for a party he'll go fishing in the morning after, and we're like, what are you doing, you know, fishing at 4 a.m. after we've had a big night out. So he kind of got the mad fishing gene as well. So like when I go home to Tasmania, I can always be guaranteed my younger brother's caught a, you know, a rainbow trout or a brown trout or a tuna for us all to eat on. And those experiences were, for all of us three boys, all of me and my brothers, was a really strong connection to nature, or to nature's, you know, nature's bounty or nature's gift as well. And planting those forests up there with Grandpa on the property, yeah, it's kind of hard to put words to the value of it, or to yeah, but in a phrase, it was pretty life-changing, and the incredible people I met up there, or the woofers that we work with, have become lifelong friends of mine. And that's how I first got invited to Mexico. Actually, was one of the woofers said, come to Mexico and teach, and I said, why not? And you all know how it unraveled from there. So that's often how these journeys start, just with a simple conversation as well. So I think, yeah, I'll wrap it up on that kind of nice note, so we might go to some questions.